Hello and welcome back to the channel. And I bet you're wondering, where on earth are we and what's all this mess? Well, things have taken a strange turn this week. I've had a structural failure in the building. Part of that bulge in the ceiling is a little bit of the story, but I've suffered a problem with the floor in the room I use to access the railway room. So I've had to devise a back way to the railway. So I'm going to share that with you because it involves a trip through a couple of my outside workshops, so you might be interested just to see what's lying around. This is the parcel from Broadway Models, arrived yesterday. So today's video is indeed going to be following up on Peter's Loco. Now, I've done a risk assessment and this way of getting to the railway is quite safe. So please follow me through the workshops up to the Super 4 layout. Okay, well, that's the back route to the layout, and I must say going up and down the ladder is doing me the power of good. So everything's set up for maybe a bit of running later. Now let's take a look at the workbench. Just mess everywhere, I'm afraid, here. Oh dear, my shirts are going to be looking a bit creased if I don't get Mrs. Snooze the iron back pronto. Now look, here's the 210-4 on the workbench. And the first job is going to be removing this central wheel with the drive gear on. So I'm going to get the camera set up on a tripod and using this nut driver to get the bolts out very cleanly, we'll make a start. Now also I've got this wheel puller which I made in a spare half hour yesterday. So I'll show you that in more detail in a minute or two. So I'm just going to set the camera up now. Okay, well, before we try and get the centre drivers out, I just thought I'd unwrap and have a look at what we got from America. So there's the new cylinder assembly to replace the damaged one in there. And more importantly, some drive gears. Now these are quite delicate, I would imagine, so I'm going to be a bit careful with how I fit them. So they've sent me 2 drive gears and an axle, so we'll see what we need. Oops, that's just rolled away there. So right now, and remember when you do things like this, plenty of photographs on your phone really help. I want to have a go at getting the centre drivers out of this loco, so I'm just going to start undoing the valve gear pins. Now these nut drivers are absolutely essential. Looking at the heads of these, someone's already had a go in the past, so I'm just going to put the screws in, safety in the foam. Such fine threads as well, so when putting it back together it's going to be pretty important not to cross the threads. So that's the 2 bolts out. Now I'm just going to ease the valve gear off each side and hopefully now I'm ready to lift out this centre axle. So we've got to pull at least one of the wheels off, remove the bearing, and then get to the drive gear. So I'm just going to show you something I made. A little wheel puller. Okay, well I just paused there for a second because I wanted to just show you quickly the principles of the wheel puller. Now here's another puller. This one I bought. This is for getting worms off armature shafts. Similar principle. I had lying around the workshop a piece of old square box section steel. So using my cutting disc, I just cut a slither off the end and cleaned it all up. So I drilled through it from the top, tapped in an M6 thread, and then I could use one of my existing mandrels, and then at the bottom I just cut out and filed a suitable groove for the wheel set. So let me just try and see if I can show you how this fits in. Just the square bearing, I'm just trying to get it down there. You have to just bear with me. Just drops in, and then I can screw down onto the shaft. So let's have a go. Now I'm going to use just finger pressure, and I did feel it give, and that's just going to pull that wheel off with absolutely no straining and no damage. So there we have one wheel removed. Now I'm not going to go into the mysteries of quartering. So we've got one wheel removed, and it does look like I've been lucky to remove the right wheel, so I might be able to just ease this broken gear off now. Indeed, that's just come off, and we won't have to take the gear off the other side. Now you can see this particular example seems to have a brass piece put onto the gear, and the one they've sent is steel. So I'm going to go off camera now and investigate whether the new gear will go onto the original shaft or whether it's been modified, and we'll take the repair a little bit further in a minute. Right, well I've been doing some investigating, and of course everything is different. So the old gear that cracked, just still gripping that a bit, pull that off, but here's the new gear, or one of them, and of course it's a very loose fit, so the axle is completely different. So I'm going to have to use the axle they sent. So what I'm going to do is, I've got two gears, I'm going to attempt to press a gear on to the new axle. So just try and bear with me while I get this into, I'm just going to be looking at it a couple of times because I want to try and line it up with the slots. So I think I've got the gear more or less in the right position, and I'm just going to have a go at just gently applying a bit of pressure. Now that's gone off centre, just what I don't want to happen. So I'm going to take that out. Just see if I can just, once I think the gear starts to force its way on, it'll sort of cut into the grooves. Now it's important not to get too carried away with this, that still looks quite central. I'm just holding it like that. I know it's obscuring your vision, but I just don't want it to jump out. I'm just turning this very gently. I'm just going to take it out and have a look now. I really don't want to put too much pressure on this. I hope that you can see that that is indeed going on, but it's a It's a bit of a tighter fit than I would have liked. Just always worry about whether the gear's going to crack again. And I am trying to do this on camera, so it's not the easiest procedure. Right, I'm just going to take that out again now. Let's have a look. Well, it's not quite flush, but it's nearly there. So I think it probably just needs one more, and it has got a slight wobble on it. So just even using this as... the thing is, I do know I haven't put too much force on it using this. Let's have a look now. I'm sorry if this keeps going off camera, it's a bit difficult to look at the picture, but I'm quite happy with that now. That's on fairly level. So there is the new gear on the new axle. Shame they didn't supply it already pressed on, but never mind. So I'm happy with the way that's gone on. It's certainly tight, it'll never slip. Let's just hope it never cracks again. I think what I'll do now is off camera is I'll put the bearings on and then get the wheels on, and then we'll have a look at it all together. Right, well, I've been studying this and I'm pretty sure it's going to be okay. So what I want to do now is probably get the first wheel on. Now I've installed the bearing, so I'm going to use my press again, and I'm using the flat-headed bolt, and I'm just going to see if I can ease the wheel. Now that didn't work at all well. In fact, I should have mentioned that just double check that the axle's the right length. Does look it. Alright, let's just try and see if I can get that wheel on a bit more. So it does sit quite nicely. You can see it sitting in the tool. I'm just going to give it another quarter of a turn. And the axle has now come through quite nicely. So it's starting to build up. Now this is where, I mean, it does feel tight. I'm just checking it. And it looks to be on nice and level. So this is where the quartering will come in. And I am going to do that off camera because I just want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to draw the second wheel, original wheel, from the original shaft with the bearing, build up this axle, and then we'll take a look at it when it's all back together. Right, well, I hope the camera's picking this up now. I've spent a little bit of time just pushing the wheels on, checking the quartering, and I'm happy with the way it's turned out. So the next job is just to fit this into the chassis, see whether it meshes gear wise and whether the quartering's right. So what I'm going to do to try and avoid this video getting longer and bittier is I will fit this into the chassis, connect up the valve gear, and then let's just see how it spins over. So let me get that job done and we'll check in to see how it's all looking. Okay, well, I'm back with it now, so probably in real time since the last clip. Half an hour or so has passed. Now, I have rewatched a couple of the clips and I really want to apologise for the focus issues. The trouble is I can't remake the segments because as I assemble the axle I certainly don't want to pull it apart again. But since the last little segment I've put the axle back in. I've temporarily fitted this bottom plate just to hold all the axles in place, and I've swapped the broken parts of the cylinder block. So they're gone now, the new bits are in. There is a slight difference, the new cylinder block parts are sort of blackened, slightly weathered, not shiny, but this is quite an old loco and parts are very difficult to obtain. But anyway, I'm pleased to report that the quartering has worked out a treat. The valve gear has gone together nicely and the gearbox isn't jamming, so it's great. So I don't know whether you can see, if I just rotate the wheels, the gear in the top part of the gearbox is moving slowly. So jobs left to do. Needs an oiling, and the gearbox needs packing with white grease, but I just thought I'd show you. Now whether this rolls on the Super 4 later, I've no idea. It's got incredibly fine flanges, so I'm just going to try and put this onto this bit of, oh, I haven't quite got that on, just bear with me. There we go, and just, you can see now that that is just rolling, no jamming, and the valve gear is working beautifully. So there's really, it's almost frictionless. So a little bit of oil on the bearings. Each axle is individually sprung. There's traction tyres on the rear. So as I say, jobs left to do. I need to put some white grease in the gearbox. I've got to put the bottom plate back on properly and the brake rigging, and then put the drive shaft and the top gear on. I think it'll be time to give it a test. So I'm going to be doing that job now, and then we're going to put it on the tracks and see whether it'll move. Right, well, it's finally on the layout. Now, I did try and have a play with it half an hour ago, only to find the rear bogie on the tender was very badly bent, probably from the fall. So back onto the workbench, but it's the best I can get it now. I'm sure it'll be fine on modern track, but it hates Super 4. But I'm certainly not giving up without at least trying to get it part of the way around the Mainline. Now, my record so far is about halfway round, and I will warn you, even though it's a DC loco, it pretends not to be, so prepare yourselves. Okay, well, I've got further than I've ever got with it, so the next set of curves will probably cause it to jump off, though these are third radius. It's a noisy blighter. You might get to see the headlamp. Really doesn't like these tight curves. Yeah, that's found it out. Well, that's the furthest it's ever got. What an amazing beast this is with its DCC-like sound. Now, I don't know whether I can... if I just lean over, whether I can encourage it to go round once more. I just can't see whether I've got all the wheels on there. I don't think so. Well, it's attempting to move, so we'll see how far we get, and hopefully next week we'll be back with something a little bit more traditional. So until the next video, I'll say goodbye.